All right. Hello, everyone. Welcome back. We're recording episode 8 today of Caps on the Coast. And it's been a busy start to the season. We've had a lot of games to look at, and the Whitecaps are off to a decent start so far. So, yeah, we're excited as always to dive into some Whitecaps and some Canadian men's national team players, a few injuries to report on. So yeah, it's been a busy week or two here, just getting started to the season. But it's refreshing to be back, and I love watching the Whitecaps every week. So I'm excited. How are you feeling about the new season?
Yeah, I'm glad we're back. We're back. The games have started, and both the CONCACAF championship games, and we have one tonight, of course, for the Whitecaps. But the MLS is back last Saturday, and so we're excited about what we've got to look forward to. Yeah, no question.
Yeah, it's an important start to the season for a lot of these players because of the World Cup coming in the summer, and all these players that are hoping to play for their country and represent their nation want to have a good start to the season. So I think we're going to see a lot of intensity in these next 4 months leading up to the World Cup. The players are going to be fired up to play well and impress their managers, and then also impress the international coaches as well. And they'll be looking to mesh with their teammates because there'll be some friendlies coming up for most of these nations leading up to the tournament. So, yeah, it's going to be an exciting few months of soccer here. The Whitecaps played their first game on last Wednesday against Cartagena. They played down in Costa Rica, and that game finished in a 0-0 draw. And then they played another game on the weekend, first MLS game of the season against Salt Lake, and that finished in a 1-0 victory for the Whitecaps. So off to a good start to the season with 3 points right out of the gate. But yeah, let's start with the Cartagena's game. That was the first match that we were able to watch in full since the MLS Cup. And it was interesting. They went down to Costa Rica, and they had a lot of the ball. The possession was quite lopsided. I wouldn't say Costa Rica had any good chances to score. Cartagena's, they didn't play particularly well, but they were structured in their defense, and they didn't allow the Whitecaps many good XG opportunities to put the ball in the back of the net. And the Whitecaps looked quite disconnected in the final third. They weren't able to find that last pass to break the final line. And I know last season we saw the Whitecaps were really good at breaking down that final line of defense and passing through the last defenders there. So it was a bit of a change to see them struggle to do this in this game, but that could just be due to the new season, fitness levels not up to par, and some of the players not gelling with their new teammates quite yet. So yeah, what did you make of that game? Where do you think the Whitecaps struggled?
Well, yeah, like you say, in the CONCACAF game to start with in Costa Rica, they did have 75-80% of the play, but but they just couldn't finish in the last third. But I think they'll be ready to play and win tonight, and hopefully we'll get a couple of goals in the first MLS game. Again, I think we had a kind of they came on aggressively, Real Salt Lake City, and they were pressuring us. We weren't able to easily get the ball out of our own half, but as the game wore on, we started to figure it out, and we played a pretty good second half. The question again is finishing, where we need to work on that, and hopefully that will improve. Our only goal was scored by a new player, and yeah, it could be more of a profound statement made in both games, but yeah, it is the beginning of the year, and hopefully it'll start to come together later. Yeah.
Yeah, I agree with your assessment there, and I think some clear patterns have started to emerge in these first few games, and I'm sure it's something Sorensen's going to be working on, but we do look a bit disjointed in the final third. I think our movement into space hasn't been too good. We're not finding the open space like we usually would. Those final balls into the box aren't as line breaking as they used to be, and I think the Whitecaps are going to struggle a bit here to start out the season because they're adjusting to having new wingers come in. I know Sabi has been playing, he's been playing pretty good in the first couple matches, but he is suspended for the next game on the weekend due to a disciplinary issue with the league, and I believe he's been fined as well. I think it was a foul that happened on the weekend against Salt Lake, so the Whitecaps are going to have to replace him on the wing. I would think that Cabrera and AZ Jackson would start the games due to Sabi not being able to play. But yeah, we didn't look like our normal selves, and that might just be due to the start of the season and not finding the passes as we normally would. But yeah, the 0-0 draw against Cartagena wasn't very impressive. I mean, it was good to see us dominate the ball, but that was expected against a team that isn't quite up to the caliber of play as the Whitecaps. So yeah, I think going forward, tonight we play Cartagena's again in leg 2. As you mentioned, this will be in BC Place in Vancouver. And yeah, at the time of recording, we're looking forward to the match, and we need a win, of course. We can't afford a draw because with the away rule goal still applicable in CONCACAF, we would not go through. So we do need to win by at least a goal to secure our spot in the next round against the Seattle Sounders. And it would be a huge disappointment to go out in the first round. So yeah, the Whitecaps are going to have to turn it on tonight. They're going to have to find a victory. And they only had a couple days here to work on some new play. That's the issue with the midweek games, is it doesn't give them much time between MLS play and the midweek to work on things and make tactical adjustments. It gives Sorensen and the team less time to analyze the games as well. So yeah, they're going to have to kind of change on a dime here and focus on CONCACAF. So hopefully they can get a few goals early and hold out a win. It would be nice to see Brian White get off the mark. I didn't think he looked particularly great in the first 2 matches. He kind of seemed disconnected with the midfielders and the wingers. So he's going to have to work on finding some space and getting some chances in the box, because he hasn't had the service either that he needs to finish some of those chances.
It seemed like at both games, he wasn't in the games. You know, it's minimal touches and not getting the ball and missing the odd ball, but in general, not standing out at all.
Yeah, it kind of shows you how hard it's going to be for the Whitecaps to replicate the success that they had last season, because their form hasn't mirrored how they finished the end of the season. So it's a bit of a worry. Ali Ahmed was crucial to this team, and I think he was probably one of the most underrated players in the league in terms of beating a defender and putting a ball into the box. You can't really ask for much more from a winger, and he delivered with that every match. So it's big shoes to fill for these new players coming in. And I thought, yeah, Jackson looked good against Salt Lake on the weekend. I was at the game myself, and I was impressed with our play, but I thought we didn't create too many chances, although we did dominate the ball for most of the match. And yeah, Salt Lake looked dangerous in a few areas, but I thought Aziel Jackson was probably the standout player of that game. And he did really well just finding some space, taking players on, and a beautiful one-touch finish to get the only goal of the game. So yeah, I was impressed with him. He's going to need to continue to produce because we need some goals and assists from the front 3. I am a bit concerned with Thomas Müller. I don't think he's particularly started the season very well. Of course, the IQ will always be there. He's a very smart player, and he's the space interpreter, as they call him. But he wasn't really able to get in the match as much as we would like. He didn't find the space to get... He had the one shot that went off the post, and then Brian White followed it up, but skied it over the crossbar. So yeah, it's a bit worrying to see Müller not start off great. I think that's probably largely due to his age. He's 36 years old. His legs are getting slower here, and he's slowing down as he gets older. He's really going to need to find some fitness, and we can't rely on him all season. I think that's important to point out. We're going to have other players that are going to step up, because Müller cannot play 90 minutes every week, especially if we're playing 2 games a week. It's just not feasible for a player of his age. He's not Lionel Messi. He can't come on and score a goal every 45 minutes or whatever. So, yeah, we're going to need to look to other players, and hopefully we haven't seen anything of Sheikh Sabali or Bruno Caicedo, the other 2 signings. Hopefully they have a good start to the season, and I'm sure they'll be integrated within the next week or 2 here, as they've just been training with the Caps and finally got their passports so they can travel with the team and whatnot. So yeah, it'll be good to see them, and we'll see how it goes. But yeah, I guess let's look ahead now to the game coming up this weekend against Toronto FC on Saturday. And the Whitecaps are going to be looking to get their second victory of the season. Toronto are coming off a loss on the weekend where I thought they played quite well, but they ended up losing the match 3-2. And yeah, they had some good play, but ultimately they weren't able to keep the ball out of their own net. So they're going to have to look to build some solidity defensively. But yeah, what do you make of the matchup this weekend?
Well, I think it'll be an opportunity for, first of all, the Whitecaps to score a couple of goals. And Toronto, they did lose away. They were to Dallas, lost away last week to Dallas, but they'll be they'll be they'll be ready to play hard. I think these local derbies, in a sense, Canadian derbies, I should say, between Montreal, Toronto, and Vancouver are always going to be a little more intense. They're Canadian teams playing Canadian teams, and that adds an element of excitement to the match. So I expect in this case too, it'll be an exciting game, and like we probably won't see Josh Sargent play. It looks like Toronto is got a new formula there. They want to bring in American players who are playing, who standout American players who play for the national. Then Idados Mahavlich, he did score last week, and once Sargent is with them, possibly not this week, but they're going to be pretty formidable up front. So Robin Fraser, is it the new coach? It's a new identity for Toronto. They're developing, and it's going to be an exciting turnaround, hopefully for the Toronto fans.
Yeah, I'm looking forward to the matchup, and like you said, Canadian games are always exciting to see that rivalry in Canada. Toronto have been playing in the Canadian Championship in the last few years and done quite well, but that's largely due to the opposition not being very formidable in the CPL teams and other League One teams from Canada. So, yeah, I think they'll be looking to make an imprint on the league. They want to start off well. They've made some big acquisitions in the offseason. Like you said, they brought in Josh Sargent, which is a big play for them. Said a $22 million transfer from Norwich, plus $5 million in add-ons. So you're looking at $27 million for the player, which I believe is a record transfer fee in the MLS.
It's the most expensive signing for an American player in the MLS.
Yeah, it's a huge transfer. And I think Toronto FC are taking a big risk with it because Josh Sargent, I haven't watched too much of him. I know he's performed well for Norwich, but is he going to be able to translate, some of the success he's had over in the championship to MLS right away? I guess we'll have to wait and see. But paying that kind of money for a player of his quality, you're gonna expect at least 20 goals this season from him, or about a goal a game, because Toronto don't have many goal scorers to look to create chances. They have Mihailovic, and he's a good player. He's a DP for them, so they're paying him a lot of money. They paid about $7 or $8 million to transfer him over from Colorado. So yeah, Mihailovic is definitely a good player, attacking midfielder, and hopefully he links up well with Sargent. That's what they'll be preying on, is that they have some good chemistry together. But yeah, Sargent's going to have a heck of a season coming in for that much money. And I feel like Toronto FC would have learned by now that maybe they shouldn't be taking these big punts on players coming off of Bernadeschi and Insigne, which were the two most disastrous signings in MLS history. Insigne in particular. He was, kind of made an absolute mockery of the club and himself, to be frank, because he didn't play well and he didn't show effort. So, yeah, they're taking a huge risk, but maybe they feel like they have to with the kind of money they have. They have the means to do this. They brought in some other good players that we can talk about, Walker Zimmerman and Daniel Shallowy from Sporting KC. And of course, Walker Zimmerman's an MLS Team of the Year from a few years, a while ago, but he is a veteran. So it's curious why they're bringing in these veteran players when they're looking to do a rebuild. Of course, the management has come out and said that they are doing a rebuild now. So it's weird to not be looking at younger talent rather than older veterans of the league. But it is good to have that leadership as well on the field. So yeah, they've made some huge signings, and they'll be looking to put up a fight against the Whitecaps and hopefully make the playoffs. I think with the kind of money that Toronto have spent, they will expect to make the playoffs for sure.
Exactly.
Yeah. So yeah, we'll see how this game goes on the weekend. Whitecaps won't have Emmanuel Sabby, as I said, so they'll have to replace him on the wing. And Berhalter has been playing a lot of minutes to start the season. Same with Kubas, back-to-back 90 minutes, I think. So they'll have to put on another couple big performances today and on Saturday. They're definitely the engine of our team this season. They're going to be the reason we win or lose. It's going to be decided in the midfield with them. I don't really have any worries with our defense. And how do you think our defense did in the first couple games? I thought Tate Johnson and Priso looked really good on Saturday.
I would agree. I would agree, Ty, that our defense looked pretty stable back there, pretty solid. That's the right word. They were covering for each other really well. I thought Johnson played a really good game last weekend. And he was a standout for us last year, and he's continuing that play. Kubas, just got a new contract, signed a new contract. He and Blackman have got new contracts, extensions. So this is all positive, and the Priso certainly played well back there too. So all in all, we can be pretty happy with the defense the last couple of games.
Yeah, absolutely. And you brought up those contract extensions there with Andres Kubas and Tristan Blackman. So let's talk about those a bit because to start the season, it was worried that Blackman might be leaving. There's talks of him joining Inter Miami. Inter Miami placed out a bid, I think around $3 million for the player, and it was rejected by the club because the Whitecaps see him in our future. And I think he's really enjoyed his time in Vancouver. So yeah, he signed an extension until the 2029-2030 season, which is a pretty big extension, 4 years. So yeah, obviously he enjoys playing in Vancouver. He sees a future here, and that just kind of extends our window, the Whitecaps window, to have success because they're locking down these key players for our team. I would consider Blackman one of our most important players and kind of the backbone of what the Whitecaps are looking to do. So yeah, that's a great one. And then Kubas, as you mentioned, signed an extension as well from 2028 till 2029. So yeah, what do you think this says about the club and their goals over the next few years with these extensions?
Yeah, well, that's what they're doing. They're the nucleus of the team on defense are going to be there in midfield. And Blackman was the defender of the year last year in the MLS, and I know other clubs were looking to snag him from the Whitecaps, but this is going to be solidify our defense and midfield. Yeah, I see our defensive play being as strong as last year, and the big concern right now, I think, is getting some goals.
Yeah, exactly. There's going to need to be some more movement. It's clear that Sorensen likes the formation he's been playing in. He started the same way for the first 2 games in 4-2-3-1. So I think we can expect the same thing going forward. But the questions are there's a few questions. Number one, how are they going to utilize the flanks, being that Ali Ahmed and Jaden Nelson have now left the club? They're going to need to make some adjustments. I'm sure Sorensen's considered this because there's new profiles in the team now, and they can't necessarily do and offer exactly what you got from Ahmed and Nelson. So Sorensen's going to need to tweak the tactics a bit here and figure out how Jackson and Sabi and Cabrera can really move into space. It's worth mentioning that Gauld is expected to come back in April, so it'll be interesting to see how he fits in back into the team. I would expect to see him on the left wing once he's fit again, with Sabi on the right wing. But he's going to offer a lot to the team if, assuming he comes back in good form. We never know with these injuries. Some players never look the same again, so it's not guaranteed that Gauld's going to come back and be a big impact player right away. We saw at the end of last season in the playoffs that he didn't look quite up to his regular standards, largely due to fitness, I would think. Yeah, it's gonna be hard to compensate for the loss of Gauld. We expected him to have lots of minutes in these opening matches and tournaments of the season. It's gonna be a big loss not to have him, and yeah, we're gonna have to see some new players step up big time. So yeah, how do you think Sorensen's going to deal with the loss of Gauld? Because those are big shoes to fill, and Ahmed as well.
Well, he's he certainly is not gonna. He's going to be very careful, prudent with when Gauld plays again. So he's not going to push him quickly. He's going to take his time. But what you just said about the wings, this is going to be the big juggling act. How we're going to sort out the wings from the wing back formation and the play upon the wings because of our loss of Ahmed and Nelson. Nelson too was a fast winger, as Jackson has stepped into that role and has done well so far. But I think he's still sorting things out, the coach. Yeah.
Yeah, you can tell with how we've played in the first few games that he's still figuring it out, and it doesn't seem like there's a clear plan of how to use the wingers in the most effective way possible. So we'll have to see what he does going forward. But yeah, let's shift our focus a bit here. We did a bit of a deep dive on the Whitecaps and broke down their first two games, and yeah, we'll keep you guys updated on that. We have another midweek game today against Cartagena, as we mentioned, and then Toronto FC on the weekend. So we'll keep you guys updated on those games and how they play out and give you a full breakdown next week. But let's talk about some Canadians here because there's been some rather disappointing news this week and a couple injuries to note. So Promise David, who we've talked about a lot on this podcast, suffered a pretty devastating injury, to say the least. He plays for Union Saint-Gilloise in the Belgian Pro League. And, he's our second or third striker with the Canadian national team behind Jonathan David and Oluwaseyi. So he's a pretty big deal for the team. And he was, supposed to be a key part of our World Cup journey, especially as a super sub, if that's how he was utilized. But he injured himself. It was a collision with another player in the game on the weekend. And he suffered it was like a hip quad injury, a muscle tear, I guess you could call it. And it's reported that he will be undergoing surgery this week and will be out for 3 to 6 months is the time to get him healed and back on the pitch, or even just to recover from the injury. It's not even guaranteed that he'll be back on the field in that much time. So it's a huge devastation for him. And yeah, what do you make of that injury?
Well, yeah, it's the timing couldn't be worse, right?
Mm-hmm.
It's a huge injury. It's going to take a while for his ruptured tendon to repair. I was reading, he's out for at least 3 to 5 months. We've got the World Cup in 4 months from now. So, look, realistically, that could be it for his opportunity play for his national team. Fortunately, it would be kind of some kind of miracle if he were back playing in the World Cup, but I just don't see that happening myself.
Yeah, I'm so disappointed because I was really looking forward to seeing him at the tournament, and I think he's one of our most exciting players. He was in great form with Union Saint-Gilloise. He's been scoring for fun this year, and he was the top scorer last year in the Belgian Pro League. So I think it kind of flies under the radar how good of a profile he is. I mean, he's very unorthodox in the way he plays. He's a big frame, 6'5", a massive striker. He's very hard to defend. He's very good in the air. He's got a good finish. He's good at finding those spaces in the box. So it's a huge loss for Canada, and I'm sure he must just be absolutely devastated right now with the timeline that he's been given, because it does likely rule him out of the World Cup. But of course, him and his team will be doing everything they can to get him back into shape before the tournament. And yeah, I don't think he would have started, at the World Cup. Maybe one game in the group stage, but he would have been really effective off the bench because he would have injected energy and unpredictability into the squad. And it's hard to find that in the striker position right now. The only other striker that can provide that, I think, is Kyle Larin, but his situation's also very much up in the air. So yeah, it's a huge disappointment for Canada. And the other injury, which is just as worrying, although the timeline isn't as severe, Alphonso Davies has re-injured himself. He played, I think, back-to-back 90-minute games for Bayern Munich, and he was looking like he was getting back in good form, into shape. Manager had done a good job of managing his minutes, so there was no worries on that end. And he just had a collision on the weekend. A player ran into him. He touched the ball past him, and he was just going at him with absolute pace. And the opposition player elected to take a yellow card and run into Davies to slow him down, and it ultimately costed him another hamstring tear. This tear is said to be more minor, and I believe the time frame to get back on the pitch is 3 to 6 weeks. So it's not as serious as Promise David's injury, but again, a huge loss for Canada. So yeah, what do you have to add with this one?
Yeah, very unfortunate timing again. I mean, there's never a good timing, but with the World Cup coming up, these injuries, are just affecting the team big time. Yeah, he's not supposed to be out for too long, possibly middle of March and 3 weeks or so. But again, he's going to have to restart the engine, so to speak. He's going to have to get back in form and be ready for the World Cup if he can. Uh, So, but just bad timing and unfortunate since it was a long time he was out with the more serious hamstring problem. I think for 9 months he didn't play, was something like that. So he's just back for a couple of games and he's sidelined. So yeah, a really unfortunate situation.
Yeah, I guess it's the age too in his career. He's what, 25, 26 now. He's not, he doesn't have that youthness where he can recover from injuries as quickly. And he's been getting injured a lot in the last couple seasons. So it's definitely worrying to see from a Canadian perspective. And it'll give Jesse Marsch less time to experiment with the player as well, because we've talked about how Davies wants to play further up the field. And with Larea playing so well, that could, in theory, push Davies up to left mid, playing in the 4-4-2 formation that Marsch elects to use. So, yeah, it doesn't give Marsch as much time to experiment. Hopefully he can play some minutes in March. I don't see him starting a game, but if he can come off the bench at least and show some leadership in the locker room, that would be important to have. Hopefully he can join them for the camps and see a few minutes. But, yeah, it doesn't give Marsch the time he would like to experiment with Davies, because I would think that he would start him at left mid in one of these games just to give him the opportunity to try it out and see how it goes. So yeah, these are two pretty big injuries for our squad. Davies not being as serious, but you wonder when these injuries are going to end with Davies, because it seems like it just keeps occurring. That's his third injury now in the last couple of years. So he'll need to stay healthy leading up to the World Cup. He can't afford to suffer any more injuries. He needs to be in good form heading into the tournament. So yeah, we'll see how it goes. But I guess it's worth mentioning too that there are quite a few injuries to the Canadian backline as of recently, as the last few months. Derek Cornelius has been out for a couple months now, and it's uncertain when he'll be coming back. Moise Bombito as well with Nice. He suffered a tibia fracture and he had to undergo surgery. So we haven't really heard anything on that front for when he'll be coming back. So those are our two starting center backs that, there's no real timeline on when they'll be back. Although you would think it would be within the next month or so, given how long ago their injuries occurred. Alistair Johnson is back training on the pitch now. He's been doing some running on the grass. So that's good to see him back playing, a couple minutes in practice and stuff. But yeah, it's a big worry with our back line at the moment, and a few players not in the best form as well, with Kamal Müller and Luc de Fougerolles. So yeah, what do you see the path forward is for this back line? How do you think Marsch is going to navigate all these injuries?
Well, I think what the Canadian coach will have to do, Jesse Marsch, is especially with the friendly games coming up, and I think we've got two friendly matches in March. I can't remember exactly, but
Tunisia and Iceland.
Yeah, I think he's going to these players. I think they might not be ready to play, and he's going to have to give some opportunities for some of the other younger players to move into those spots. I know Priso normally is not a starter, but some of the players like Priso might have an opportunity to move in and do their best. He's certainly not going to put these players we've been talking about into the games too quickly, even though they might feel they're ready to play. But it's going to be a juggling act for Jesse Marsch. Fortunate juggling act that he's going to have to come up with.
Yeah, for sure. He's going to have to do a job to manage these players, and it comes down to the clubs as well. They all have different club situations, different physiotherapists, and it's not just down to Marsch to manage their minutes. It's also down to the clubs to not rush them into play when they're fit to play again. So there's so many different variables to consider here. But yeah, it's going to be up to a couple players to step up in March. I would think that Luc de Fougerolles would start a game, even though he's not in the best form. Yeah, as you said, Priso is a good shout because he's been playing well with the Whitecaps, and he looked great against Guatemala in that friendly back in January. So I could see him starting a game. If not, Joel Waterman. He's playing with Chicago Fire in the MLS, so he's a good option at center back as well. But yeah, we're missing some key players right now. And the other player I forgot to mention is Elfie Jones, who's still recovering from an injury. So yeah, it's actually kind of absurd what's happened to our back line in the last few months here, how many injuries we've suffered. And you just hope that all those players are ready come World Cup time to give our squad the best chance possible of winning our group and doing well at the tournament. We're gonna need a lot of those players to be fit for sure. So yeah, let's look at a couple other Canadian players now. Dayne St. Clair and Max Crepeau. They're battling it out for the number one spot for Canada. We've talked about that a lot on this show, and I think that's the number one biggest position on the roster for contention, is who will be starting that opening game in June at the World Cup. So, yeah, I'm excited to see how this rivalry plays out. We got Orlando and Miami being the two clubs that they're playing at in Florida, and Inter Miami have come off to not such a good start to the season. They lost 3-0 on the weekend to LAFC. Bouanga scored 2 goals and looked very dangerous for LA. And Messi looked largely ineffective. So it'll be interesting to keep an eye out on those two teams, as I'd say they're probably the two favorites going into this season to win the MLS Cup. But yeah, what did you make of Crepeau? He had a good game with Orlando, didn't he?
Dayne St. Clair? Oh, sorry, Max Crepeau. Yeah, he did. He's now playing for Orlando City, like you say. They played against New York Red Bulls, but they lost 2-1. The Red Bulls beat them, Orlando City, 2-1. But he had something like 11 to 12 shots to deal with. He apparently played an outstanding game to keep the score down to 2 goals for New York. I think this is going to be the Dayne St. Clair and Max Crepeau are going to be, every game they play from here on in the MLS is going to be watched very carefully by Jesse Marsh, the England or the Canada coach, to see who's best informed for the World Cup. And both Dayne St. Clair and Max Crepeau, I think, started off well. What I understand is Dayne St. Clair, there were about 13. There were 13 shots on Miami, and 3 were on target. Or 16 shots. LAFC 16 shots on Miami, and 6 on target. So he probably played a very good game. Although you were saying earlier that he misjudged one ball in that game.
Yeah, he did have a pretty big mistake on LAFC's third goal. He kind of came out to the outside of the box to challenge on a play, and Bouanga just chipped it over his head and then finished it nicely in the net. So these are the little things that the Canadian manager and the coaches at both clubs are going to keep eyes on. And obviously St. Clair's a starter with Miami. That's why he was brought in. So he's going to play a lot of minutes, and there's going to be a lot of eyes on him playing with Messi. So his mistakes are going to be more in the media and more criticized than Crepeau's. But for Crepeau, he has to have a big season, because Dayne St. Clair has proved himself to be a better goalkeeper in the MLS in the recent years. But for some reason, when Crepeau puts on that Canadian jersey, he performs very well. So that's why this rivalry and this competition for the number one spot in net is still ongoing, is because of how well Crepeau shows when he has the Canadian jersey. So yeah, we'll keep an eye out on that rivalry all season, and every match is going to be analyzed for sure. And it'll be marginal differences that end up deciding which keeper starts at the World Cup. So yeah, that's just a matchup to keep your eyes on going forward. All right, let's talk about Stephen Eustachio now. He played with LAFC on the weekend. As I said, they beat Inter Miami 3-0, and he played an outstanding match, played a full 90 minutes. And looked great on the ball. I think he'll be one of the best midfielders in the MLS this season, just due to his quality, his ability to shift from box to box and cover a lot of ground. I think he covered the second most amount of ground in that game out of any player. So yeah, he covers a lot of ground, and he's a very good passer. He can find passes that most players can't. And he's a good dribbler as well, good leader in the locker room. So it's great to see him having lots of playing time. He absolutely needed that this season. At Porto, he wasn't getting much playing time. So at LAFC, he will be looking to start every match. That's why Marc Dos Santos brought him in, the head coach. He promised him lots of minutes. Yeah, Eustachio is going to look to continue to have some good form this season. Finally, Jonathan David. Another Canadian player, he's been playing all right recently. He's had some good link-up play with other players. Hasn't scored a goal in a few games, but he got eliminated today. Him and his squad, Juventus, got eliminated from the Champions League against Galatasaray. It was an absolutely crazy game. He played, I think, 70 minutes or something. But yeah, Juventus picked up a red card early in the game, around the halftime mark, and they were down 4-1 on aggregate. So they had to score 3 goals just to tie the two legs. So they did that. They scored 3 goals with a man down. So it was 4-4 on aggregate, and then it went to, or sorry, it was 5-5. They had 1 goal in aggregate already. But yeah, it went to overtime at that point, and Galatasaray scored 2 goals in overtime. I guess Juventus really went for it with the red card. They had to throw bodies forward and try to get another goal, and ultimately it cost them the match playing a man down. But the grit that his squad showed to come back and to tie that leg was very impressive. So yeah, it's been looking good with Jonathan David recently. He's finally returned to some good form. But it's very unfortunate to see Juventus get knocked out of the Champions League so early before the round of 16. So yeah, but he'll continue to play lots of minutes in Serie A, I'm sure, with Vlahovic being injured. And yeah, we'll see how it goes going forward. But that's going to do it today. I appreciate you guys tuning in to episode 8 of Caps on the Coast. And yeah, we're going to continue making episodes every week. Whitecaps are back in season now, so they'll be playing lots of games with CONCACAF Champions Cup and MLS over the next few months before the World Cup. So we'll keep you guys updated on that. And yeah, I'm going to start posting some World Cup content soon, previewing Canada and their group, and I want to discuss some other nations as well. So if you guys are interested in some World Cup content, hit subscribe, hit the like button, leave a comment below, and yeah, I'll be uploading weekly. So tune into those episodes, and we appreciate your guys' support. Until next time, bye.